Hey guys, Corey with Camel ADV. I'm going to do the install video tonight for the KTM 790 gut guard skid plate. If you do any off-road riding, you need a different skid plate. The stock one is about 1 millimeter thick, 1¼ mil, super thin, not up for off-road riding. Even if you're not doing anything super hardcore, you're running along, a flat rock flips up, nails the skid plate and ends up cracking your sump. So something that you should be doing before you go out. There are a few considerations when getting a new skid plate. There are several brands, several different designs, and I'm going to go over why we did what we did on our skid plate. We did not want to mount to the engine at all. No engine mounts whatsoever. Tied in to the foot pegs at the back where the center stand normally runs. So this is not compatible with a center stand. So if you're looking for a center stand skid plate, this is not the one for you. When you're picking a skid plate, something that's super important on this bike is that you get something that ties into the foot peg location. If you're looking at a skid plate, it looks great, the price is good, you like everything about it, but it doesn't tie into the foot pegs, you might want to reconsider it, and I will show you why. So we've got a pivot here, we've got a pivot here, and the only thing keeping those two together are these bolts here, which you would think would be fairly strong. It's not. You're riding along, you clip a rock, as you can see here, I've hit a few, and your foot peg mount moves back. See how much that moved? That's crazy. It's bad enough that this is moving, but what's terrible is this bolt right here, where it goes through the frame and into the engine case. When this whole thing is moving, this isn't just pivoting back and forth on that bolt is getting tweaked this direction too. And you can break that boss right off the back of the engine case. And that's not in the sump, that's the main engine case. So if you break that, you're pulling the whole engine to replace it. It's not super common, but it does happen. I've got a friend in Utah that's got a rental company, Utah Enduro Adventures. He had two 790Rs last year that he was renting to customers, and they both came back with cracked engine cases specifically for that reason. So why I'm saying it's super important that you get a skid plate that ties into the foot pegs is we've got it mounted to the bracket on the front, and then we have the skid plate that comes down, connects both foot pegs together, and keeps them moving from front to back. And by not moving front to back, we're going to eliminate that problem. The problem became very obvious when I started doing design on the skid plate. I'd made the brackets, had drawn up the skid plate, made the brackets, sent the stuff out to get cut at the laser cutter. I got it back, had everything bent, I went to bolt it on, and nothing fit. The back mount here was way out. It was like 3/8 of an inch out. And I was thinking, like, what happened between me measuring it and now? Because when I made the mock-up parts, they fit, and now nothing fits. So I went and got the old parts out of the metal recycling bin and put them on. They didn't fit either. So eventually I was thinking the only way that this is happening, the only way that this can be possible is if my bike is bent. So I started measuring things. I actually thought I had bent the frame. So I'm going to show you here. We are at 22 7/16. The same measurement, we are at 22 3/4. So this is obviously a big deal, and we need to brace it. This happens even with these bolts totally torqued, red Loctite on them. It takes very little pressure to move them that amount. And if you don't believe me, go out, grab a screwdriver and check it on your bike. It is crazy the amount that they move. So we want to make sure that the new skid plate ties into these to keep them from rolling back when you take a hit, keep you from cracking your engine case. Now with all the doom and gloom out of the way, I'm going to introduce the Camel ADV KTM 790 gut guard. So we did the skid plate as a multi-piece because of shipping. So to have a box that's big enough to fit this whole skid plate, the shipping charges would be through the roof. So it costs a little more to make it. We've got this step in here, and then we've got the riv nuts but it's much smaller, much easier to ship. And then we've got a nice beefy 3/16, which is about 4 3/4 millimeter stainless steel bracket that's powder coated, and we've got PEM nuts in here. So that guy goes in the back, and we've got our fastener package. So we're going to take our flathead M6 bolts and we're going to attach the upper to the lower. And as always, everything needs blue Loctite. And same thing, we're going to take our rear mounting brackets with the 4 M8 flathead bolts. So we're going to come to the back bottom bolt here on the side tank guards and take it out. And go around the back side and do the same. On your bike at the back, there's going to be 2 bolts that are underneath the rear brake lever, 1, 2, and they go into rubber pucks around the bottom of the sump. The rubber pucks on mine broke off shortly after getting the bike, so they're not on here, so unfortunately I can't show you removing those. But pop those 2 bolts out, take the rubber pucks out. Now we're going to come to the front, we're going to take the tank guards off. There's 2 bolts on each side. Before we pop this cover off, you need to come and remove this hose. It just clips into the hole on the bottom of the cover here. And this is the vent for your charcoal canister. So with that removed, we can just slide this guy down and we can set it aside. Then we're going to remove these. And we can remove this. And then we're going to take these 4 bolts out, holding the skid plate on. That's the last bolts that hold the skid plate, so just make sure you grab it before you take the last bolt out. And we can set this aside. So we're going to come to the back. We're going to use a T45 Torx bit, and we're going to remove this lower bolt out of the foot peg. And then inside, in the gap in the back, here's a spacer. We're going to set those aside because we're going to use the ones included in the kit. We're going to go around the other side and do the same thing. going to take our large flange M6 bolts and install the 4 of them in here, holding up the skid plate. We're going to leave these a little bit loose because these holes are slightly slotted, so there's a bit of movement up and down. We're going to come to the back. The rear mounting bracket is going to go on the outside of this inner tab, and then we're going to take the spacers that are included in the kit and we're going to put them in between here. Might take a little bit of wiggling to get it in. We're going to put some blue Loctite on here. And then we're going to start that bolt. We're going to leave that loose and we're going to go to the other side and do the same thing. Take our spacer, slide it up there. Again, bolt, a little bit of blue Loctite. And again, we're not going to super tighten that up. If you find that this is a little bit tight going in, you can loosen this bolt, and you might have to do the swing arm bolt just a hair, just to get this in, and then when you tighten everything up, it will be all good and aligned. So we're just going to give the skid plate a little tap up, and then we can tighten these 4 bolts. And with that done, we can come to the back and do a final tighten on the rear bracket. Now I can come to the front and put the tank guards back on. And we're going to take the vent hose here, again off the charcoal canister, and pop it back into the hole in the tank cover. And then we're going to take the hex bolts, the nylock nuts, I'm going to slide the bolt through, and there's a slot here on the tank that this bolt goes into. The bolts are just long enough to get through the nut without a washer. If you want to run a washer, you're going to have to use a dab of Loctite. The bolts are M6 by 20s. 25s are just too long and they end up hitting the exhaust pipe when they come through, and there's no option for a 22 mil bolt. It's 20 or 25, unfortunately. So just be aware of that when you're doing this. We've included a washer and then we've included the nylock nut, so just kind of take your pick which direction you want to go. We're going to go around to the other side and do the same thing. Just a note here on the tank covers, if you're fighting to get these 2 bolts lined up, you may want to remove this bolt that holds that rubber mount in. That goes into the bottom of the tank. It gives you a little more wiggle room, a little bit easier to get these in, and then you simply put that bolt back in and that one last. That wraps up our install video for the Camel ADV gut guard for the KTM 790 Adventure. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments section below or info@camel-adv.com. Thanks for watching.